Hey y'all, welcome to Soccer for Us. I am Bart, and I'm soloing it on this episode as I wrap up the October World Cup qualifying window for the U.S. men's national team. Now, I have poured myself a glass of wine, and I am ready to talk about all that transpired in this October window. It was 2 wins and a loss for the United States. A lot of downs, I'll be quite honest, but some good positives that I think we can hope for as we move forward. Now, before we dig into this, I do want to ask you to please subscribe to the show on whatever podcatcher you are listening right now. Subscribe to Soccer Down Here, and you will get every episode of Soccer for Us, every episode of the Daily Soccer Down Here show, and all the other great content that comes out of the SDH network. Also, give me a follow on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. That way you can interact with some polls and other questions I put out randomly and hear the other takes that I have on U.S. soccer in general. So like I said, 2 wins and a loss for the United States in the October window. Still in second place in the qualification table. Still very much on track to qualify, but a lot of tough games come ahead for the United States, and they do come ahead in November. So I think that there are a lot of concerns and questions I have about Berhalter and the players that he put together and put on the field during this window. And we'll talk about that as we go through. The U.S. started with a 2-0 win over Jamaica on Thursday, October 7th. I was fortunate enough to be in Q2 Stadium for that win and saw Ricardo Pepe score both goals toward my end. It was an inefficient first half from the United States. It probably could have been a little bit better. Jamaica probably should have seen a red card both in the first minute and the 35th minute for fouls that denied obvious goal-scoring opportunities. I am a little surprised that at least the second one wasn't given, because I understand a little bit why the first decision was only a yellow card. I understand it from the referee's perspective that he didn't want to change the game that early in a match, but Jamaica made it so that he didn't really have to think that hard. It was a very obvious foul. It was a very obvious goal-scoring opportunity, and a foul by a Jamaican player that wasn't even an attempt, a legitimate attempt to play the ball, was absolutely the cause of that denial of that obvious goal-scoring opportunity. And so I'm a little shocked that the first wasn't a red card, but even more shocked that the second wasn't a red, because you had already let them get away with one. You figure that you come back and give them the red card for the second offense at the very same thing. This one at least was a legitimate play on the ball, so that's probably how the referee rationalized it. But if you deny an obvious goal-scoring opportunity with a foul right there, it has to be a red card. So it could have been better in the first half, but overall I think the U.S. was still a little inefficient. But 2 goals in the second half from Ricardo Pepe, a very good change at the half from Greg Berhalter and his players. They definitely were more vertical. We heard this word verticality a lot leading up to this window. And we didn't see a whole lot of that in the first half of Jamaica. It was still a lot of sideways passing. But in the second half, and we saw it on the first goal that we scored, Yunus Musa got the ball, immediately turned upfield, and drove vertically up the field, found Serginho Dest, and then the cross to Ricardo Pepe. So I think that is the ideal if you're the United States. And, we saw a lot of that in other games in the window, and that's what Berhalter and company want to see from this team. Turning upfield quickly from that central midfielder, dish it off to either an overlapping fullback or the winger, and have that person put in a cross for either the striker or an on-rushing winger or midfielder to finish off. And we saw that with that goal that Pepe scored. Luckily, we added another. It was 2-0. Easily, I think, the best performance we saw from a Berhalter team, or we have seen from a Berhalter team, playing the way he wants to play. And I think that's the key, is that the Jamaica game, now granted, Jamaica was not a very good team. They were very disorganized, and they made it very easy for us to play the way that Berhalter wants to play. But that was the first time I think we can see, oh yeah, this is what this is supposed to look like, and especially against these, quote, inferior teams who are more concerned with defending than they are attacking. And Jamaica fit that bill. They just are not set up well to defend like that, and they got punished twice for it. Probably should have been punished more, but unfortunately, the U.S. only gets not unfortunately, but fortunately, the U.S. gets a 2-0 win. It could have been more, probably should have been more had there been red cards issued. But look, you take the 2-0 win, you take the 3 points at home. And at that point in time, I think we all felt very positive about this team. Again, it was the best that the Berhalter team had looked underneath him playing the way that he wants to play. And I felt that we've had a sense of confidence about us going into the game on Sunday, October 10 against Panama. Unfortunately, that was kind of dashed once the starting lineup came out. So there were 7 changes to the lineup from the Jamaica game to the Panama game. In the Jamaica game, we came out with Turner in goal, Dest on the right, Zimmerman and Robinson, Miles Robinson in the middle, and Anthony Robinson on the left. The midfield was Yunus Musa, Tyler Adams, and Weston McKennie, and the forward line was Brendan Aronson, Ricardo Pepe, and Paul Arriola. Now, the Panama match was a shakeup, to be quite honest. You had in goal Matt Turner, that stayed the same, but on the right you had Shaq Moore. In the middle you had McKenzie and Zimmerman, and on the left you had Bello. Now, do mind that Anthony Robinson, Zach Steffen, and Weston McKennie did not travel to this game, so that is at least 2 changes you're going to have to make. So Bello comes in for Robinson. And on the back, actually the back line had 3 changes. You had Bello for Robinson, McKenzie for Miles Robinson, and then you had Shaq Moore for Suchinyo Dest. In theory, I didn't have any problem with those necessarily because, again, Bello was going to have to come in and play for Anthony Robinson. Clearly, Shaq Moore starting in favor of Dest because Dest needed a break. He did pick up a little bit of a knock in the game against Jamaica. And I figured that, you're going to have 4 center backs play in a window. It makes sense. I don't hate Berhalter rotating center backs, but Zimmerman and Robinson looked really good against Jamaica, and Zimmerman and McKennie did not look good against Panama. So the 3 changes on the back line, then we had 2 changes in the midfield. Lejet, Acosta, Musa were your midfielders. So Acosta comes in for Adams, Lejet coming in for McKennie. Those are not like-for-like replacements. I'm sorry, they're just not at all. The forward line was on the right, Paul Arriola getting his 2nd start in a row, Jossie Zardes in the middle, and Tim Weah out left. Now, again, you're seeing that all 3 levels of the field had multiple changes. And I think that's where I'm going to get into the Greg Berhalter talk when we get into that. But U.S. loses 1-0 in Panama, a second-half goal off a corner kick from Los Canonilleros. And on the road, it just wasn't good enough. There was no urgency. There was no fight, really. I don't want to say fight because that sounds bad to the team, but there was no urgency. There was no real aggression to score. This team looked incapable of scoring. It did not look like the same USA team that played against Jamaica. This is the first ever time that we've lost to Panama in a World Cup qualifier. So when we talk about, CONCACAF is tough on the road, that doesn't hold true at all in Panama. In fact, we've won there more than we've lost, or more than we've tied. It's really disappointing. It wasn't that tough of an atmosphere. I know Berhalter talked a lot about the weather in his post-match. But Panama had to play in that hot, humid weather too, and it wasn't like it was that hot, but it was definitely humid. And I don't think that really affected the team. I don't. The team was bad from the start. So it's not like we withered in the second half. If that had happened, we'll buy that argument. And you know what? You chalk it up and you move on. But this was a bad lineup, a bad tactical setup, and a bad mindset. And that bothers me more than losing. If you go down there, and I've said this all the time, I want us to try to go win games on the road. And I don't think making 7 changes where you decrease your quality at just about every of those changes. Yeah, you decreased in quality at every change. Other than maybe Tim Weah, but Tim Weah starting for Aronson, not really. That's not really a decrease in quality. That's not an increase in quality. It's just kind of neutral at that point. Paul Arriola still starts. So when you tone down the quality level, when you take that off from a team that dominated a Jamaica team, just a few nights before, and put out 7 players, change multiple players all up and down each line, That's insane to me. It really is. That does not tell me that you think. That does not tell me you're going to win a match. That doesn't tell me, Greg Berhalter, that you tried to win. Now, I understand that you wanted to rotate and keep players fresh. I don't disagree with that thought process, right? There are ways to do that, though, without having to completely start new players. The team looked disjointed and looked flat out incapable of scoring. We could have played. I don't care how much stoppage time was added at the end of that game. There wasn't a goal coming. There was a lot of negative response to this game. And for me, I think it was more of the negative response to the performance. Again, I've said time and time again, you try to go win your games on the road, and if you do that and you lose, that's okay. If you go to try to win, you're going to pick up road wins. Right now on the road, we have a win, a draw, and a loss, and I'm okay with that. Like, from the standpoint of just results, that's okay, right? But the problem is we haven't looked good on the road. We haven't played but one good half of soccer on the road. And the El Salvador game is kind of a wash. I'll take that for what it is. I would have liked for us to perform better, but we had chances to score. We got a little unlucky. But this one was bad. This was very bad performance from the U.S. And so losing badly in a place where you've never lost before, that's not okay, Greg. That's not. And the negative response, I think, was very justified. Because for me, the performance was bad. And the result was indicative of our performance. It's not like Panama were great. Panama was not that great of a team. They didn't create that many more chances than we did. Ultimately, I think the problem was that the lineup didn't match the tactics that Greg wanted this team to enact, right? Again, we've talked about verticality, how we need to get upfield, how we need to break lines. The players on the field were not really capable of that. I specifically am going to call out Sebastian Lejet because he, on multiple occasions, straight up turned an attack around and passed the ball backwards to ended up going all the way back to our goalkeeper. And I know that Sebastian Lejet is well liked by Greg Berhalter. I get it. But the reason he's been in the squad so much is because he, in theory, knows the system well and is really able to execute it. And we've seen that for the most part. I will stand up and say he has, for the most part, been a guy who makes the possession-based soccer happen. But in this game, when we needed to be vertical and he puts his foot on the ball, turns back, doesn't even take a chance to turn upfield or take a look to turn upfield, that's not okay. And that's a decision that Berhalter made. Then you look at a guy like Paul Arriola and you think, okay, verticality, sure, he's good at getting behind people, but he's not really good in possession, and he didn't offer anything in terms of the work rate that we saw that he gave in the Jamaica game. He wasn't able to roll over the field. And then Kellen Acosta had a really, really bad game. Yunus Musa was ineffective because he was surrounded by bad people, and he didn't have a great game himself. And then you have Zimmerman and McKenzie, who aren't great on the ball. They're not bad at all. I don't think they're bad on the ball, but they're not the best passers out of the back. And you add that with Shaq Moore and George Bello, who are still, I think that it's fair to say they're not the top quality at those positions. And I've wanted both of them to play more, but they're not the quality that we needed in that game. It all just kind of compiled into a really bad performance, and we come out with a 1-0 loss that really felt worse than that. And at that point, I do think that it was a little crazy to demand Berhalter be fired immediately, and some people were likening it to, it was actually worse than anything Klinsmann had done. That's nonsense. That's truly nonsense. Now, I did not like Greg's post-match press conference, and he got real testy with the media. He got real testy with Sam Stejskal for literally just asking, hey, Panama had spent the entire first half taking the exact same corner kick, and you never adjusted. Why was that? And he gets mad about, you need data. Well, the data's there, Greg. The data was there with your own damn eyes, right? Panama scored on a corner kick that they had taken probably 4 times before that, right? The first couple times they tried the Olympico, whatever, but it wasn't necessarily the Olympico. The goal was to put the ball right on top of Matt Turner and create havoc in the penalty area. And what happened? They basically got a Giossi Zardi's own goal because, and I'm not going to stick up too much for Giossi because it wasn't a great header, but he's the only man marking 5 guys there. He was the only person from the U.S. in that space with 5 Panamanian attackers because Greg told the rest of the defenders to stay in that zonal marking scheme right at the top of the 6, and none of them moved to help out. That is on Greg. That goal is on Greg because that is what he told them to do. He didn't think that they should make a change. There's ways to do man and zone. He didn't choose to do that either. He stuck with his stubborn tactics like he usually does until he absolutely has to throw them out. And he waited too long. That was the problem. He waited too long to come to the realization that he needed to change. It's very similar to Tim Ream in the Nations League, where you go, wow, Diego Lainez is probably going to skin Tim Ream. And he does it. And then he does it again and scores, and then Greg pulls him. That is frustrating, Greg. And it was obvious to anyone watching that that was the only way any team was really going to score was from a set piece. And we let Panama do it to us. So players were bad in Panama, but I think Greg put a lineup out there that was not going to execute the tactics that he wanted. And then when it came for time for changes, he made terrible changes as well, or didn't make changes in when we're talking about defending set pieces on that corner kick. And then we come to Costa Rica needing a win. We come home for a game in Columbus where we've had a lot of success. There's a lot of storied success for the United States in Columbus. And we give up a goal in the first minute because of a lack of intensity. And I tweeted it out, Greg, fire Greg. Like, I was, at that point in time, it was very apparent to me, from what I could see, that this team was not playing well under him. Now, I will absolutely eat my words there and say that they turned it around and ended up playing. If we thought Jamaica was probably one of the best performance, I think Costa Rica was right up there as well in terms of what we saw after that goal. Tons of chances created, lots of great touches in the attacking third. Executing the Greg Berhalter plan of attack very well. That first goal that Serginho Dest scored to tie it up came from 13 passes that we cycled back from our goalkeeper up the sideline on the left side all the way to the right side, and then a tap back that Serginho Dest absolutely just rocketed into the top corner. Keylor Navas is still the best player in CONCACAF. Maybe Alphonso Davies is up there, but like Keylor Navas is a fantastic goalkeeper, like one of the best in the world, and there's no way he was getting to that. An absolute firecracker from Serginho Dest. So as bad as the start was, giving up a goal in the first minute, and just the lack of like intensity and the domino effect of minor errors that caused that first goal, the response was great, and we got a goal to tie it up finally. I was a little shocked we actually didn't score a goal to end the half because it just felt like we were constantly putting pressure. Like I said during the game, the goal to tie it, it wasn't like it was like, oh, it's coming because we had been pummeling and the Costa Rican defense with shots, but we have just been constantly putting pressure on them and trying to find different ways to break through. And we finally did, and it was a great little layoff from Musa on the right side back across to Dest. And Dest took a touch into the box and ripped a shot. And that was definitely a pattern of play that Greg Berhalter would want. So, again, the team looked like they were executing. Then we go to the second half, and Tim Weah just absolutely rips a ball through. You know, it hit the post, it hit the goalkeeper, it went into the back of the net. But, I mean, he absolutely wallops the shot, and it was a great goal. I'm so glad Tim Weah got his goal because I've been wanting to see the promise and the hope of Tim Weah for a long time, the U.S. national team. I believe so strongly in this kid because he genuinely looks like he's having fun playing soccer. And I know he's gone through a lot of injury struggles, and I'm glad he's at a place in Lille where he's able to win the league and compete at a high level. And I'm glad he finally got that goal for the U.S. So the 2-1 win, it was good. I think that the response, the 89 minutes we played after the goal were great. The problem is we still gave up that goal at the beginning. So my question is, was it good enough? And I don't know if it was good. It was good enough to win. The performance was, absolutely. Is it good enough to, continue forward? Not really, because we have to also understand that Costa Rica was a very uh, old and tired team. They were on their third game of the window. I think it is clear, though, that for the U.S., you can see the quality and the youth we have and the depth that we have in the third match of the window when we're able to bring on guys like Bucio and Hoppy, who can still provide spark. You have a Ricardo Pepe who's fresh for the 70 minutes he played, and then even Jossi Zardes comes in and is able to pressure and run at the the Costa Rican back line and keep them off balance. That's something other teams in this region don't really have, and we're quite lucky that we only have to worry about Mexico in that regard. So we don't play them in a third match window. We play them in the first match of the window, and both times we play them. So that's pretty lucky. The point is, our depth and quality show through on the third game. However, those two windows in a row where we've needed a win in our final game to make the window productive, right? If you had only drawn Costa Rica and came out of this window with 4 points, that would have been inexcusable, honestly, because you had two home games. And if the recipe is to win your home games and draw on the road, well, you didn't draw on the road and you drew a home game. So, Greg needed to get a win, because had he not, the pressure would have been immense on him. That's concerning still, that we constantly have this issue where we have to rely on that third game to be a masterclass and the super important and intense game. And a lot of that's on Greg setting the team up not well and having to do that. I want to talk a little bit more about some big picture issues. I mentioned that one, but I still think that's like maybe a little bit of a microcosm or a micro issue, not a macro issue. So a couple of big picture questions that I have. Greg blamed the loss in Panama on the group being young. He said they're a young group. They need time to learn. It's a learning experience. But in Panama, he started more veterans. He started Jossi Zardes. He started Paul Arriola. He started Sebastian Lejet, Kellen Acosta. All of these guys have played in World Cup qualifying before. So what young group is learning in Panama? Those guys, the older veterans, are the ones who failed. You can't keep bringing out the young and the inexperienced card, Greg, when the young guys are getting it done. You started your youngest lineup ever against Costa Rica and got a 2-1 win. You started, at that point, it was the youngest lineup ever in Honduras. Yeah, you made some changes, but even still, the youth got it done. It was Robinson and Pepe getting it done in Honduras. Do we need to be concerned with experience so much? No. We need to be concerned with quality. Who's playing well? Who can contribute to this team? Who is influencing the game well? Who is executing the game plan well? Who has more quality? Who can provide the quality we need in that match to win? That's the question, not who is experienced. Experience doesn't get you shit, Greg. You have to win, and you need the best players on the field to do that. Now, I understand that you're going to have to rotate. I understand that completely, because you cannot play 11 guys, 3 matches, all 90 minutes, right? But rotation doesn't have to mean that they absolutely don't play a match or they don't start. And this brings me to my next issue, and that's Greg seems to pre-plan matches to set himself up to make changes to win games in the second half, instead of trying to win the damn game in the first half. Until Costa Rica, we had not gone, it had gone 9 games without scoring, competitive games, without scoring in the first half. It's insane, right? In World Cup qualifying, I believe that was. We scored in the first half against, I believe it was Canada in the Gold Cup. I don't quite count Haiti as a team to score against in the first half. We did score in the first half against Mexico, but we've struggled to really find rhythm in the first half. And I think it's because Greg plans to have his subs solve the problems, right? He calls them solutions. So his thought process in Panama, and he said this, was that Aronson and Arriola were the same person. Now, I'm squashing this real quick. He doesn't mean they're the same player in terms of like the same quality or whatever. He meant that those two guys who play the same position, because they do, were basically going to split the whole 90 minutes, right? One was going to play 45, one was going to play 45. I understand that logic. I really do. Why not start Aronson? He's a better player. Why not start the match well and see how he's going? Why are you starting an inferior player in Paul Arriola? He played all 90 against Jamaica. He clearly didn't have it. You know, that doesn't make sense to me. Why are we leaving games to be decided in the second half when we have the quality and we should have the desire to win them in the first half? You can win a game in the first half. You absolutely can. You get a couple goals in the first half, you're going to be good. And a lot of these teams who run a bunker against us, you get a goal in the first half while their game plan's out the window now. And so your subs become, that's where a guy like Zardes or even a Roldan or Arriola become very important, because you can put them on and they're going to work hard and they're going to frustrate the other team and probably nick a couple of turnovers. Another point about this is that we're 6 games into World Cup qualifying. The learning period is over, Greg. Stop calling this learning. We don't get a redo. You don't get a redo of, oh, well, you know, that was a tough trip to Panama and we lost. You don't get another trip to Panama this cycle. Is that going to somehow magically help you when you go to Jamaica next cycle? Maybe. I hope so. It better. But you certainly didn't learn a whole lot from the El Salvador and Honduras, match where you started so flatly. So I don't know, Greg. What are we learning? I'm concerned that Greg is still trying to be cute. He doesn't realize that it's the time to experiment or tinker or whatever is over. He's overthinking. These are not data collection exercises. It's time to win. All right, I'm done yelling or being upset. For now. I do want to talk about some good things, right? I want to talk about who stood out most in this window. And I think the player that stood out most to me was Yunus Musa, because he's the only man, thanks to a Paul Arriola injury, who started all 3 matches. Now, he was very good against Jamaica. Again, he was basically the guy who created the first goal we scored. He was very good against Costa Rica. Again, he gets the assist on the Dest goal. He was not good in Panama, but I would also argue that no one was good in Panama. So everyone gets a strike. It's not like he was bad amongst players who were good. No, everyone was bad. But he still was the only. I'm very mad that Greg took him off against Panama, because I thought he was the only player who was executing the verticality component of the game plan well. But I thought Musa was pretty good. I think he proved that he belongs in the midfield of the U.S. men's national team. I don't know if that's a consistent starter, but I'll say that he is the guy who I'm penciling in as my starter for every game. Alongside, probably, Weston McKennie, and behind them will be Tyler Adams. So I think that is a positive that we have the midfield trio solidified. You can deviate a little bit from that, as you're going to have to, rotate, give guys a break. I understand this. But I think Musa's in your starting midfield. Next guy is Ricardo Pepe. Look, the dude has scored 4 goals in 3 starts and 4 appearances. Some people said he was bad against Costa Rica. That may be true. He was not worse than anything else we've seen from a U.S. striker. And he still has 4 goals in this World Cup qualifying campaign. We played 6 games. He's got 4 goals, or 3 goals, excuse me. He's got 3 goals and he's created, 4 or 5 total? It's pretty darn good for an 18-year-old. Yeah, he wasn't great against Costa Rica, but we still scored 2 goals, and he was very important in the game, in the build-up play, in facilitating attacks from when he dropped into the midfield. He was much more effective than what we've seen from any other striker in the U.S. pool. He's got to be your starting number 9. And the last player that I really, again, felt was, he wasn't as flashy, I think, in this window as he was last window, but I thought Anthony Robinson proved that he can be a very solid and reliable defender. And we need that on that left side because Sergiño Dest is our right back, and he's going to bomb forward and be creative in all these things, and it's great. So we need to have someone who is reliable at defending, but also very good going forward on the left, and that is Anthony Robinson. He's proved that to me, and I'm happy for that. All right. Maybe not the last negative thing. I do want to shift to, I asked this question on Twitter, and I feel like it's important to talk about it. It is a negative question, but my question is, who played themselves out of the roster for November? So looking at this window, you had 3 matches, had a lot of guys play. Who do we think from these matches, from this 20, ended up being a 27-player pool, played themselves out of the November roster? And a lot of people, I'm not going to read every response, but a lot of people are saying Lejet, straight up. Chris and Krista at Los Farringtons on Twitter say Zardes, Acosta, Lejet, Areola, Roldan. None should be on the roster again. They don't have experience in anything. All the younger, more talented guys haven't experienced themselves. We have young, world-class players. Time to move on from average veterans. And Chris and Krista, I think that's kind of the point I made earlier. Yes, those guys, actually, every single one of those guys that you mentioned, I think other than Roldan, had World Cup qualifying experience before this. And that is not invaluable. I'm not saying that that's not valuable. But we have young, world-class players. Why are we sacrificing quality for experience when the experience hasn't gotten us results in these qualification matches? Will Renegar, at Will Renegar on Twitter, said, Lejet, but we all know he'll be back. Roldan didn't play enough to play himself out, but shouldn't have been there to start with. I agree. I actually don't mind Areola and Zardes filling specific roles in a lineup of better players, but you can't play all of these players together. And that was exactly the problem in Panama, Will, and I think you hit the nail on the head. I actually think Areola and Zardes proved they fill a very specific role on this team. They are great workroom or engine room guys, great work rate. They will always, always, always be in good positions and make things around them happen because they're going to hustle and likely nick a ball from the opponent. The problem is not always great when they can get that ball at their feet, but that's important if you're up a goal or 2 and you're trying to kill a game off and you need to got to run and disrupt what the other team's trying to do out of the back. But Lejet, again, I just don't know what he proved this window. And he was not good during the Gold Cup. We need to be very honest with ourselves about this. He was not good during the Gold Cup. He's been not great for the U.S. for a couple months now. I think personally, the man is tired. I truly think that. He has played a lot of soccer for both the U.S. and at the club level, and the man probably just needs a month off. US Keeper at US Keeper on Twitter. Shout out to him. He's a great follow. I don't think Lejet has the legs or pace anymore to play the international game for the USMNT. Areola is on his last chance, in my opinion. I think as a one-off, he's okay versus the lower-level CONCACAF teams, but age, injury, and inconsistency are all becoming a problem. Yeah, I think you kind of hit... I don't know if I want to say he absolutely doesn't have the legs or pace anymore to play. I think he genuinely is tired, and his legs don't have it in them anymore. So thanks for that, US Keeper. An interesting one that I have seen, and I can't disagree with it. Carrie Zivkovic at Carrie Zivkovic on Twitter. Bello out for Scally. Lejet out for any other midfielder, at least when it comes to playing time, but he will still get his Greg roster invite. I'd say if Pulisic and Reyna are back, the top 4 wingers are obviously Christian, Gio, Brendan, and Tim. So Areola might get dropped. I think I agree with all of what you just said there, Carrie. I really am high on George Bello. I'm an Atlanta United fan. I've seen this kid play throughout his entire professional career. He has not looked good in World Cup qualifying. Now, I will stick up for him a little bit and say Greg has only thrown him in away World Cup qualifiers, but I think I would rather bet on Joe Scally because Bello hasn't done anything that makes me think Scally could be worse, and it just makes me think that Scally might be a little bit better. I also agree that Lejet probably should not be in the roster for November, but probably will be. And Areola is going to be, I think his only issue of not being recalled back would be Gio and Christian getting healthy and coming back in. Hopefully Gio is healthy. And also, I don't know if this is necessarily a thing for November, but Jordan Morris is coming back from ACL injury. Now, I don't know how controversial of a take this is, but I would feel no problem with Jordan Morris being in the winger pool for the U.S. men's national team because I do think that, especially plays for the men's national team, he delivers, which is something that we can't say for Paul Arriola right now. Let's see. A lot of people said Lejet. I'm trying to find the one that I wanted to talk about. Zamrock USA said Hoppy played himself out. And his response was apparently he had a beef with Greg in the locker room and looked poor in his short cameo versus Costa Rica. I disagree that he looked poor, Zamrock USA. I think that is an incredibly harsh read on how he performed. I thought he at least was doing well to get into space. I felt that he was okay. Let me pull up his FOTMob rating here. Yeah, he had a 6.5 on FOTMob, which is not terrible for a sub. Actually, I think that was the best. Yeah, that was the best sub that we had. So that was scored. He was not as effective, but he created 2 chances for us, which is pretty decent. And had, let me get this. He had, where are my touches? Yeah, he had 6 touches and 4 passes completed in the opposition half. That's not bad for a guy who played, 20 minutes? Yeah, he came in the 73rd minute, so he played probably all of 20 minutes. I disagree that Hoppy played himself out, but I do think that Hoppy is going to run into the same problem that I talked about with Paul Arriola, where it just comes down to who does he replace on the roster, because, I do think that we're seeing that Greg is not willing to have an expansive roster. We also don't need that much of an expanded roster in November. I think we'll see only about 25 guys because we only have 2 matches. So again, most people said Lejet. A lot of people saying Arriola, Roldan, Zardes. I think that Lejet and Roldan are superfluous at this point in time. I truly do. And I think Arriola is also getting there because I don't think he's better or offers anything better than that you can definitively say over the other guys who would be brought in. All right, so we'll leave on the positive note, right? We're still second in qualifying. We are in second by our own. Mexico is in first. Sure, they're on 14 points. They're playing really well. They have scored a lot of goals. They haven't given up a whole lot of goals. They got a +7 goal differential. They were really good this window. But we're in second on 11 points. We have a chance to alter that with a home game against Mexico and an away game to Jamaica. In third is Canada on 10. Panama is in fourth on 8 points. Costa Rica is in fifth on 6 points. And then the bottom 3 are Jamaica, El Salvador, Honduras, all on 5 points. Now, I think that you can see that the teams are kind of separating themselves. It's only been 2 windows, but it is 6 games, right? We've played 6 of 14 games. We'll have eclipsed the halfway mark by the end of next window. And I think it's pretty clear where the line of demarcation is. You have Mexico, USA, Canada, who to me are the top dogs, are the ones fighting for that automatic spot. And then Panama, Costa Rica fighting for, I think, the qualifying spot. And then Jamaica, El Salvador, Honduras are just kind of looking for moral victories at this point. Now, no one's out of it. No one's officially qualified. However, I will say that, Honduras has only 3 points. I'm sorry. They are done. They're done. But El Salvador and Jamaica with 5 points, still very much within striking distance of that playoff bid. But I don't think any of those teams I don't think Mexico's falling out of the top 3. And I think it would be very hard for the U.S. to fall out of a qualification spot as well. And Canada has a couple of opportunities in November to submit their spot as well. So that's the positive, is that we're still very much in control of our own destiny. I will say that I don't like averaging less than 2 points a game. That is concerning. But we did get 6 points out of this window. We got 5 last window. We have a home game and away game next window. And hopefully we can get 3 to 4 points out of that and really separate ourselves from the rest of the pack. All right, once again, thanks for listening. I am Bart. This has been Soccer for Us. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at Soccer for Us Pod. I appreciate you all tuning in. We will be back in between the windows because we do have some U.S. women's national team stuff coming up. They will play 2 games against Korea on Thursday, October 21st and Tuesday, October 26th. And then we will have a special. I'm going to try to get Jason Longshore, the godfather of Atlanta soccer and purveyor of the Soccer Down Here universe. I'm going to try to get him on here for some kind of big idea conversations, overarching conversations about U.S. soccer as a whole, not necessarily the U.S. men's national team, but just the overall census of where we are. Again, thanks for listening. I'm Bart. I'm out.